Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's Pillow Talk podcast. Delighted to have Sam Dyer here today. This is going to be a fascinating one. We were chatting over the last few weeks about what topics to bring you to get you maximum value. Sam's one of the most knowledgeable property investors I know. So we are going to have some fantastic content for you guys. We are live. If you're watching live, we're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the other places you're seeing us. So please ask your questions. Type them in. The team will bring them up on screen. Guys, you do not want to miss this. If you're watching on the replay, hi, and you did not get your questions answered, or you've missed us, then please get in touch. We'll make sure we bring you an episode number 2. We've got probably 4 hours of content to bring you, so we're going to split the podcast up into multiple ones. I'm not going to do Sam an injustice by introducing. I'm going to pass over. Sam, give us an introduction into yourself, a little bit about all your businesses, your property interests, and we'll take it from there. Sam.
Well, thank you, Scott. My name's Sam. Yeah, I live just outside Edinburgh. Background, a brief background in oil and gas, but fell into property investing, I guess. Originally sourcing to manage. So I set up a letting agency. It was very focused on property investment. I grew up in selling the whole groups. Kind of thing. Got a bit obsessed with buying property and just scaling, really, which is, buy-to-let's been my core strategy, mainly because it's simple, you can scale it, park it, move on. And laterally, recently, I set up this as Wealth Network, which is a community, really, and we run events, we run a community, and I'm just all things, not just property, but it's about wealth creation, buying assets. So I used to say, I think it's a little bit cheesy, but people used to say, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "I'm an asset collector." It's a bit cheesy, but that's kind of where my motivation lies. It's collecting assets rather than collecting properties that I find exciting.
And a property just happens to be one asset of different ones.
It's an asset that is. It's probably one of the more hands-on assets, like comparing it with stocks or whiskey or watches. More hands-on in terms of what you need to do, but the returns can be a lot higher, and you can leverage it, and you can have infinite rates of return due to the leverage and the things that you can do with properties. I think that's why property is a big firm favorite for a lot of people. For that reason, the high returns, but my mindset has definitely shifted as I've got older. Properties are a good vehicle to create the wealth, but you don't necessarily want to leave your wealth in property long term. You want to start shifting it about and be more diversified and have more passive assets as you get older.
Nice. We have loads of stuff. We were talking. I'm in Sam's. This is Wealth Network. We will cover that later. But kind of as well as you've got Sam's big brain here and experience, you've got everybody in the This is Wealth Network, of which we're in. We see all these different things, different groups focusing buy-to-let investments, sub-regions down into different areas. So get really specific focus about different regional areas to invest in. There's cars, there's crypto, there's everything I was just talking about, even setting up your bank accounts to be safe. So lots of knowledge to come, and lots of other people in Sam's network that he can tap into as well. We've named this Property Portfolios and Creative Funding. People think of buy-to-let investors as buying a property, saving up a deposit. They've got maybe reinvest their rent money, and they'll have a plan of one property a year, and that's going to fund their pension. And many people did that, including myself when I was younger. But actually, that's the kind of starting thing. There's much more sophisticated and cooler ways and more profitable ways to do that. So I want to pull some stuff out. I've put property portfolios, creative funding. Let's start with property portfolios. When you first came to see our office here at the Centre of Excellence in Glasgow, you're well known for being the guy that does portfolios, buys portfolios of properties, restructures, does some fancy stuff. So tell us, everybody knows what buy-to-let investment is on this channel. We're buying a buy-to-let property, we're renting out for a tenant, hopefully getting some margin there and the capital appreciation at the end. But tell us about buying portfolios, because that's super interesting and it's next level for a lot of people.
I think it can be a natural progression. A lot of people think developing and building's a natural progression, but I hate refurbs. I'll do anything I can to not do a refurb.
Yep.
And I got a taster of it when I got kind of introduced to the trading side of properties, we buy, sell, buy. And that doesn't mean buy, spend 6 months renovating it, 3-4 months in the market to then sell it for in out like a traditional flip. But there's traders that will buy properties, do nothing, and sell them.
Yep.
And I got a taster of that. And I went, wow, that's my kind of flip. It's all about the laptops, the relationships, the phones, that kind of a deal. But so there's all these little strategies. There's the buy to lets. There's it's now called a buy, renovate, buy, refurb, rent, refinance. So it used to be called deposit recycling when I started. I don't know, just an all money out buy to let, as you will. And there's all these little fancy strategies all on their own. But when you buy in bulk, you can kind of combine them all.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of people miss the point with portfolios and go, well, the 6 here, but I don't like those 2, but I'll keep those. Nah, I won't buy it. Well, no, we'll buy the 6, sell the 2 you don't want, keep the 4. But by doing that, what you actually do is you combine a flip with a buy-to-let strategy, and you can grow. And ultimately, you could end up walking away with more capital than when you started, plus you've added units to your portfolio.
Yep.
And this trick, it's all about the speed. And if you don't have to do a refurb, you can scale quite fast. But, and this is a big but, you need to be good at your paperwork, your organization. You need to learn almost white collar skills.
Yes. We were chatting about this the last time you were in the office. The focus wasn't on, like, what I would say is the property education fancy strategies and going and do 2-day courses and doing these fancy obscure legal tricks. It was the basics. It was having the right lenders, having the right solicitors, having the right conveyancing, having the right team behind you. And actually noticing 90% of business, all the business is a boring admin, but people would miss that. All the stuff you spoke about, some of the stuff was stuff I'd never heard anybody speaking of in these 2-day courses, and all this creative stuff and fancy tricks. But essentially, the way to make that work is having the basics and the team behind you.
I mean, the fancy stuff is great, and there's fancy stuff that I suppose that will do, but the basics buy-to-let works. And people go, oh, well, why would I do a buy-to-let to get £250 cash flow? Blah, blah, blah. Well, no, buy 20 of them in one go. Trade for some, keep some. And the beautiful thing about buy-to-let, there's letting agents all over the country. Finding letting agents is not difficult. There's so many to pick from. You've already got the people you need at your fingertips to kind of run these assets. Solicitors all over the country. Accountants that understand property all over the country. So there's people there for the picking you can use. But with buy-to-let, it's boring, isn't it? But you can kind of do your deal, park it over here, that's it, and just keep adding and adding and adding. But definitely what does happen when you sort of pass that 10-15 mark, you need to start thinking about it more like a business. It needs to be more systemized, more structured. And that's one of the big things that I've kind of found myself falling into when I set up my first mastermind group, was people at that sort of level. How do we get to the next level? Because you have to start thinking about it a bit differently. And okay, there's a little bit more overhead costs you need to put in.
Yeah.
But then that allows it to keep running, to keep acquiring. So it's just a beautiful, simple strategy that works. There's a massive housing demand. Rents are going up. So you have a buy-in at X point. Okay, you're getting 250 cash flow there, but as long as you just wait, your rents go up. Okay, it's all been flipped on its head recently with interest rates rising, but we'll come back to that. But as a core strategy, it works. And as long as you don't get greedy, you just keep building it, not extracting money instantly, like quit your job in how many days or financially free from property. I mean, I don't rely on my rental income because it's all going back in the business. I'm building something, so it's I've got a low leveraged portfolio that can actually pay a sustainable income rather than just rinsing it of everything I can as soon as possible. I think that's the key. So it's boring, but it works.
I agree with that. Having had a letting agency since 2006, we would have people coming in. I'm not watching this, I won't mind their names. Coming in, I'm a property millionaire, I've got 42 properties, I'm going on yachts and cruises, and we were saying, well, you need to reinvest some of that money back into doing your properties up. maybe not leveraging too high, always remortgaging to the hill and taking that money out, but spending it on nonsense, spending it on cruises and going. A property portfolio can fund a very nice lifestyle, but as they noticed, and this was after the credit crunch, a change in interest rates in your mortgages that were on a fixed rate coming to an end of a term and then been massively shocked at what the next interest rate is going to be. People went from, well, I'm a millionaire, Scott, I'm going on 6 months cruises, big fancy houses on the coast, to renting a 1-bedroom flat off us on housing benefit in the space of a month, because the mortgages changed, portfolio lending, and then it was like, well, I've got low interest rates where you run cash flow positive of 250 and a little interest rate change, because that portfolio was so highly geared, they've lost everything. So the boring basics work. A little bit about safety there. People, some courses would say, right, you do that, you get your, what's buy-to-let deposits these days, still at 25%. As soon as you start paying your mortgage down, you can refinance. And again, it's like, well, get your debt, take as much money out. Why have 25 grand equity in it when you can take out another 25 grand deposit and build your portfolio? There's a balance there, though, Sam. What's your experience? Yes, you want to keep refinancing that and building a portfolio, but what's the kind of average? What's a safe gearing for you? What's a safe buy?
So that's
ratio.
When you're starting out 75%, you've got a handful of properties. Isn't too worrying. And again, it depends on the stock. Completely depends what it is. My kind of outlook on it was, well, so I added a whole extra element of complications. So we all know about how you can come in with say 60 grand, do some fancy stuff, walk away with 60 grand in the bank and a property with a 75% loan to value mortgage on it.
Yeah.
And you can just keep going and going and going and going. Now, that property that's geared, let's say it's worth 100 grand, it's got 75 grand mortgage on it and it's paying X in rent. You kind of want to use that rent to chip away at that mortgage. So it's like you've gone in and out the deal, you've parked it, you forget about it, and it's chipping away at itself. Then on the next one and the next one, and they're all chipping away at themselves.
Yep.
After a period of time, your rents go up. Okay, there's a bit more cash flow in the business. Maybe I'll put my overpayment up a little bit. And but you're keeping that pot going. But if you don't have any money, well, this is where like private lending comes in. Well, I'm going to find someone with money. And that's pretty much been the key to my scaling, was I just found more and more private investment. And that was my like working capital to get in and out of deals.
Yep.
And they were allowing me to get stakes of equity in various properties.
Nice. And
then you're then using the rent roll to pay them down. But this is where after a while you don't always get all your money out. So after a while you might build a bit of a debt bubble if you're not careful, even with the repayments. So this is where selling the odd one helps. And I think the classic is, I'll do a few flips to build my pot and then I'll start holding buy to lets. And the problem is it's very, very slow, one by one by one by one by one. So you kind of want to ramp, okay, private finance can help you ramp up. So you start ramping up, but that's kind of what led us to, well, buy in bulk. We'll go buy 10, we'll sell 3, we'll keep 7. And you can condense almost 3 years of activity into like 6 to 9 months.
Nice.
And then it comes back to being organized. If you're organized, it's easy. It's not rocket science. It's not difficult.
Yeah. It's
just, and you get to know, you can pick it up quite quickly, and you just follow the process. It really is as simple as that.
Yeah, and I'm in Sam's network, and there's always activity going here. New people coming in, but the fundamentals get missed, and it's like, right, there's a really big deal that could go wrong just by try to skip it and be fancy. It's the fundamentals that work here. We're talking about big portfolios, refinancing. The first part here, property portfolios and getting 10 at the one time is a massive dream to some people. We mentioned getting properties with no money down, as the coin goes, but you're going to need some money to do this. Can people build? You've got loads of capital, loads of businesses, loads of income, loads of track record, and great reputation with banks, lenders, and people that may give you private money. What about people starting new? Are buying portfolios out of their reach, or is that something they could do with the right network?
I didn't say anything about a load of capital, so it's all tied up in assets. But
assets.
But yeah, yes, you can buy property with no money. Well, you can't buy property with no money. You need money, but it doesn't have to be your money. So I think, yes, you can buy property with none of your own money. So the money has to come from somewhere. And the problem is, starting out, you got no track record.
Yep.
Okay, you'll join communities, you can get around people, the right people, and kind of leverage them to a degree, but you still need something to start. So the common, again, looking at me, I started off sourcing and management, and source is a very popular strategy. Rent to rent is quite a popular strategy as well. You can get into it with very little money. You build up experience, you build up credibility, you get known, and then that can lead into actually getting a little bit of money to get started. So my first buy to let, I used my own money. But then you kind of have that. So there's nothing wrong with taking a few years to get off the ground.
Yep.
Learn the base, almost like your apprenticeship, so to speak. But at some point, when you start buying, okay, you want to buy maybe your first one, you're just a single buy to let, get familiar with the process of conveyancing, the little bits and pieces, do it almost small, learn your craft. But the problem is, if you just keep doing the same thing for 20 years, you're going to grow very, 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 very slow. And it's once you get the fundamentals right, it's knowing when to then propel and not constantly, just keep doing the same thing and going, this is rubbish, this isn't work. No, it does work.
Yeah.
It's maybe time to take a bigger step and go on to the next thing.
Yeah. Cool. One of the things we mentioned, here's a question from the audience, guys. If you're watching live, please pang your questions in. We'll pick the good ones. Should you own properties in your own name or a limited company?
I'm not a chartered accountant,
so I'm not authorised to give financial advice, but,
but
what would you do?
The vast majority of people that I speak to and in our community are buying in limited companies.
Yep.
And it doesn't just come down to taxation. There's other little benefits like inheritance. It's easier for passing wealth through inheritance if it's under a limited company wrapper. It's a lot easier to put expenses through a limited company.
Yep.
To make, this is taxation, but it's also a little bit of planning. So in your personal name, you're almost forced to declare the profit.
Yep.
No matter what. In a limited company, you have the option to, do you know what? I'm going to fire some money in my pension to bring that corporate tax bill down. We actually had a really interesting there's a strategy shared by, we've got a SaaS partner, and this is Wealth Network. And he was explaining how there was this they had like a $100,000 corporation tax bill. But what they did was they basically got a bridging loan to buy an asset back from themselves, and then that wiped out the corporation tax. And they ended up paying like no corporation tax, but they moved the asset into their pension. And it was, I honestly, if I had a whiteboard here, I could sit here and draw it out and try. Yep. But you went in and you go, wow, that's amazing. And it's like, so this limited companies give you that element of separation from you as an individual. So I think the biggest one, I'd say the biggest one of the bigger ones is control. You've got more control over the income and the expenses. Taxation is the one that the accountants always zone in on.
Yep.
There's inheritance. And it's also cleaner. As a business owner, you might relate to this, and anyone listening, if you're a business owner, you're self-employed, certainly in Scotland, the norm is to pay your 12,570 through your payroll and the rest in dividends to get you up to 43,662. And you just put that through, whether you need it or not. And obviously, that's what you pay yourself. Now, if you've got properties in your personal name, it's almost taking up space in your tax return, overcomplicating it. You don't know what the expenses are going to be. You don't know what rent's going to come in or not come in. You don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. So you almost have to wait to the end of the year to know what you can actually pay yourself. So it just gives you a whole layer of extra complexity that you do not need.
Yep.
I think where I've typically found accountants in favour of buying in your own name is when you're only buying one or two.
Yep.
But I'm a big believer in if you only want one or two buy-to-lets, just don't do it. Don't even bother. So 99.9% of the time, I'm seeing people buying in limited companies. And I'm saying, if you want any less than 10 buy-to-lets, just don't bother. Not worth it. Not worth it.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's not financial advice. I'm not recommending limited companies, but I'm just saying, in my experience, it seems to be where the vast majority of investors are operating. Maybe a little bit of a caveat, because limited companies, your accounting fees are going to be slightly higher. Mortgage rates are going to be slightly higher, and there's slightly less lenders. So that's kind of the caveats. But overall, I think the pros outweigh the cons. That's my opinion anyway.
Definitely. And again, we're not giving financial advice, and don't just take your own independent stuff. But I have seen people with £1 million buy-to-let portfolios that had to sell them because they were in their own name in the event of somebody dying, pay inheritance tax, pay capital gains tax, pay all the mortgages off, and essentially are left with nothing. So you could be sitting with millions of pounds in assets and nothing. So definitely worth considering getting them into limited companies or doing whatever and you pay tax. But many years ago, nobody really put them into limited companies. That was never heard of. Now everybody was with the tax. So guys, just be very aware. See the people that make the rules, and you hear we're recording this on election day. The results have been announced about the new government, and so very timely for Tories versus Labour, tax versus business, blah blah blah. But what I will say is the people that make the rules, the people that make the legal and the tax rules, make them in such a way that they don't need to pay tax. So you're just following the rules that the people that make the rules implement. But 99% of the people don't understand the way that is. So we're not giving financial advice, but if you do what the experts do, and the people that make these tax rules and these financial rules and legal structures, guys, you can benefit from the same thing as them. But 99% of people don't bother. They just buy it. And getting a buy-to-let in an asset is a massive thing. For some people, getting that second property is amazing and well done to them. But thinking about business structure and tasks, wiping out, you could wipe out £1 million portfolio on the event of your death. Nice simple one. I know the answer to this already. Are you still actively growing your portfolio? So based on a little bit of government change, interest rates, a little bit of uncertainty, you're still in the market for growth.
Well, funnily enough, we were appraising the 12-unit one recently in Dundee. It was all really good stock. We were getting close to putting an offer in. We were going to trade most of it. And the reason, I'll come back to the reason for that. I'm not actively pushing to buy something, but this one came up and I was like, wow, that's too good not to buy. But what we're focusing on at the minute, we had quite a lot of growth. We bought quite a lot the last 3 years, pretty much over 100 units, retained most of them. And we're going, oh wow, we've grown very quickly. The interest rates have gone up. Some of the older stock we want to do interest rates has pushed our interest payments up. So I'm looking at the portfolio going, we need to have a little bit of a consolidation year, focus repayments. We're doing a little bit of internal housekeeping, sort of restructuring our processes, hiring people, just to get it running a bit better. Kind of pause for a minute and go, right, okay, let's get this under control. There's lots of rent increases going out. That's something I've always done, but it's become a lot more important to do it every single year now with the Scottish Government launching an attack, which has spectacularly backfired.
Of course. Everybody knew, even the government knew, everybody knew it would be disastrous.
I was just saying to my wife this morning, we had one that got challenged, and normally I would have, it was on a low rent, and under normal circumstances, I would have put a 25, maybe £30 increase in. The letting agent was like, nah, just ramp it up to, it was like a £70 increase. And even then, it was way below the market rent. And I'm like, all right. So they put it in. It got challenged. The rent officer came in and adjudicated. And we've ended up being awarded a £43 increase. I only would have put in 25, 30. But because of the Scottish Government and the way they behaved, it's like, well, no, we'll go for as much as we can. And I'm like, so I've got more than I even would have wanted anyway. And the next year, my view's always been sticking a 10 or 15 quid. It's not a lot of money, but actually you're setting a precedent. If you're doing that every year, it's a nice flow. The tenant can keep up. And it's like, say a tenner a month, right? That's £120 a year. Next year, you've got the £120 plus another £120 if it's another tenner. So it's £240. So you're actually £360 up. In the following year, you're double, and it compounds. And then if you've stuck with 10 years the same tenant, you actually, your revenue's increasing. So I'm going off on a huge tangent here. But fundamentally, we bought a lot. We want to consolidate a little bit to get ready for the next stage of growth. We also bought an office last year. That's taken up a lot of time, which again is obviously a property at the end of the day. So finish that off. And probably 2025, we'll see if the base rate starts falling, then it's going to be, it'll be cheap. Well, not cheap, but cheaper debt available. It's probably going to be a prime time to scoop up some bargains. So am I actively buying? You could argue yes, you could argue no. Take what you will from my answer.
And that leads us nice to the next question, actually. why is it important to diversify your portfolio? I'm deliberately keeping the focus here on, I'll say, vanilla buy-to-let, traditional buy-to-let residential properties, not venturing into service accommodation or anything fancy, because listen, my business was built on buy-to-lets. Many of our clients are buy-to-let landlords that have a letting agency, so it is a solid investment strategy. You mentioned commercial. Commercial won't touch on service accommodation, but as you build a portfolio, and you said you got 100 units in the last 3 years, so assuming you've got hundreds of units in your portfolio, what other things would you add to that? What other assets? Because you mentioned properties, one asset that you're building.
I'm definitely a boring guy. I love my stocks and shares eyes up. I used to pick individual stocks, now I just put it in funds. But the reason I love a stocks and shares eyes up, but I dislike it because it's very hard to get money into it, because you have to, you create your wealth in your limited companies, you have to extract it and then have it in your personal name to put in your stocks and shares ISA. However, that's what I dislike about it. What I like about it, once the money's in and it's invested, all capital gains, all dividend income is free from tax. And obviously, most business owners, as I alluded to earlier in the call, 43662 is what they'll pay themselves every year, unless they opt to pay higher rate tax. If you want to earn more money, it's very difficult to get out of the company. But if you've got a stocks and shares ISA that's got, I don't know, 500,000, $1 million in it, and it's spitting out, let's say it's worth $1 million and it's got yielding at 4%. What's that? 25 grand, 20 grand,
Probably.
something like that. I think 5% is 25 grand. So that's 25 grand per annum with zero tax on it on top of your existing salary. So I'm looking at it going, I need to be funneling cash into that to build that up, because that's going to top up an income and there'll be no tax on it. Plus, and this is something that it was like a penny drop moment for me when my IFA said, you should be looking at your stocks and shares as a bank account. It's a savings account. So if you need money very, very quickly, you can liquidate stocks very, very quickly. Excluding bank holidays, Monday to Friday, is it 8 till 4, the London Stock Exchange is open. You can liquidate anything, and within 2-3 working days, cash is in your bank. So if you've built up a stocks and shares ISA, not only can it be producing income and creating that, it's almost like a pension pot, I guess, but you can access it now, which is quite good, because you can't do that with property. So big fan of stocks and shares ISAs in particular. Pensions as well, they're very tax efficient. So you've got all this wealth you've created in your limited companies. What do you do with it? Fire it in your pension, pay less corp tax. Obviously, pensions, you can't access it now, but they've got loads of benefits. You can utilize SIPs and SASs. You can buy commercial property in them. You can loan back money to your business. So they're probably two of the key ones: pensions and stocks. Nice and boring, simple, fundamental basics. I've got a little bit of cash in whiskey. I've got a client that deals in whiskey and has an online shop. So that was more, I suppose I took a little bit of his advice. I just want to diversify, put some cash into that. I've an interest in cars, but it's one of these ones where it's the sort of assets you need a lot of capital and you're parking it and they don't cash flow, but you can make money on them. So they're probably some of the key ones. But again, it comes back to the thing: buy to let, buying in bulk. You can make equity almost at thin air relatively quickly. Once you've made the equity, you can kind of, we've alluded to about 100 odd units, but actually don't plan on keeping them all forever. At some point, when the opportunity arises, you liquidate them, you take the equity, and you can put it into a different asset class. And my final point on this, one of my favorite quotes that I heard before was, everything in my property portfolio is for sale. Literally everything I own is for sale at a price. Now, we've got units in Aberdeen that, let's take, I don't know, flat on Union Grove. Unless I get 120 grand for it, I'm not selling it. I'm not going to get 120 grand for it right now. It's just not happening. But as soon as someone comes along and offers me 120 grand, I'll sell it. I just sold a house in Bowness a couple of months ago, and it was one of the ones, I'm never selling it. Great asset. Tenant served notice, moved out, bought a house. My mortgage was expiring. I was looking at it going, well, let's just stick on the market. Got a good offer, sold. If I didn't get the offer I wanted, I would have just put a tenant in again. I mean, no skin off my back. So literally anything I own is for sale. Everything's for sale, but just at a price. And I think with that mindset, you need to take the emotion out of it. Take the emotion out of it. It's just each one of them properties is just a bank of equity, and at some point you probably want to extract it and diversify. And let's be honest, right? At the end of the day, are we building up wealth just to drop dead and do nothing? No, we're building up wealth so we can enjoy our lives, and later in life be able to scale back a little bit, and and actually retire
with a good income and a good life. Guys, the last 5 minutes there have absolutely gold. We're touching on stocks and shares, taking money tax efficiently out your limited company and paying your pension, SIPs and SASSs, stocks and shares, ISAs, beautiful stuff. And each one of those is a thing in its own as well. So fantastic. I want to move on to the next topic. Before I do, buying portfolio, if you're buying, so quickly explain ADS. So if you're buying your own house, well, you've got land and building transaction tax in Scotland, but in Scotland they like to just, what is it, treble what it is in England? Tell us about the additional dwelling supplement if you're buying multiple properties.
Yeah, it's beginning to get a little bit complicated. So land and building transaction tax is the tax that if you're an investor or a normal owner occupier, whoever you are, everybody pays it.
Yeah.
You pay nothing up to 145 grand. So a lot of time people forget that they are paying it. They're just not paying it because it's a nil rate band. Then if you also are buying a second property, so basically as a property investor, second property is buy-to-lets or any property in a limited company, you pay on top of LBTT, you pay ADS, additional dwelling supplement, which is now at 6%. It was 3% when it came out, same as in England. Then it went to 4%, and then it went up to 6%.
Yeah.
So you pay that on top of your LBTT. Now, a lot of buy-to-let investors are purchasing properties under 145,000, so they're only paying 6% on that. They're paying 0 LBTT. They're still paying LBTT, but it's just, as I said, nil rate band. Then obviously, if you buy a property at 200 grand, you're paying a little bit of LBTT. I think it's 2% above 145 grand. Don't quote me on that.
It changes, yeah.
And then obviously the ADS on top of that, you add the two figures together, and that's what you pay. Then there's another layer of complexity if you're buying a portfolio. I think we'd alluded to this earlier. Multiple dwellings relief is a bit of legislation that still exists in Scotland. There was multiple dwellings relief in England, but it's completely different. Completely different bit of legislation, just happened to have the same name. So I think there was a bit of confusion when it got announced that Scotland was losing that relief. But right here, right now, we still have it. And when we're in, is it 5th of July, 2024? Multiple dwellings relief still exists in Scotland. So with multiple dwellings relief, it's a relief on the LBTT. So the ADS just doesn't apply. You still pay some tax. It's just a lot less than if you were just going on standard rates. And there's a formula that they use to calculate multiple dwellings relief. But ultimately, what it takes into account is the average purchase price of each unit, the number of units, any commercial property in the portfolio adds on what they call a minimum prescribed amount. There's all X's and Y's and Z's and different variables you plug into this formula. But long story short, most portfolios you'll pay approximately 1% stamp duty tax. Yeah. With the lower value portfolios, it's a bit less than that. But for example, we did a portfolio. It was 2.9 million was the purchase price. We paid 32 grand in tax. If the ADS was, my figures will be a little bit off kilter here because I think it was at 4%. It was about 170 grand. Don't quote me on that, but 32 to like 100 is a massive saving. And then down the bottom, lower scale, we did a portfolio at 440 grand. Now, obviously, at 6%, that's 400 grand. That's 24 grand. It was 6% of 440. Can't do that one in my head, but it's more than 24 grand anyway. Yep. We paid 2.5 grand in tax on that. So you can see the correlation with the numbers. It's a massive. You pay something, but it's a massive saving.
Yeah. And additional dwelling supplement more than it is in England and Scotland, so just be aware.
Yeah,
cross that border. It's double. For now, who knows what it's going to be in the future. So, and let's take a question.
On the additional dwelling supplement, I think what we've got to bear in mind is the buyer doesn't pay it, the seller pays it, because you just offer less.
Yep.
That's pretty much the crux of it. I know that might sound a bit daft, but ultimately, as an investor, you're not going to buy a property if you factor it into your numbers before you buy.
Yep.
So
That last question on probably portfolios is we not at your scale, but as an estate owning an estate agency, we still do. We've got landlords looking to sell portfolios probably between a couple, and I think the biggest portfolio we sold through the estate agency was 13 units. Are people buying it because if you're buying a portfolio of 10 units, would you be looking for a discount because you're buying it in one transaction, or are owners essentially looking at a premium because it's a ready built portfolio?
100% buying at a discount. I think we got to bear in mind as well, as a seller, if you're selling a portfolio, they're probably all going to be tenanted. And yeah, selling tenant properties is huge benefits to the owner. They keep the cash flow. They avoid a whole ton of expense. So I very often, the way I like to look at it is, say you've got a property worth £100,000. If you sell it vacant for £100,000, that's the equivalent of selling it tenanted for 95 grand in terms of what the seller will actually receive after all the fees, costs, and whatever. And that's a massive approximation, but generally off the bat, with like a property around about that sort of value, you're talking a 5 grand difference. So you sell it vacant for 100 or tenanted for 95. The seller gets exactly the same at the end of the day, but for a buyer buying it at 90, they're already a peg ahead in terms of where the peg's in the ground for negotiating. And then obviously if you make the portfolio bigger, it's a lot harder to actually find a buyer for that. So we did a portfolio last year that's 39 units. It was a value of 4 million. Well, it's 20 grand off 4 million. We paid 2,885,000 for it. It was a 27.5% discount. Now that we had to negotiate a little bit further down, but what you've got to bear in mind is who is the seller. Now the seller was in his 80s. His kids had no interest in taking on the portfolio. He'd bought a lot of them really cheaply, like years in the 90s. If he was to sell them one by one, not only would it take forever, and he'd probably die before, or maybe not die, but be in ill health to actually enjoy the money before he even got them all through. One a year. It'd be a massive nightmare in terms of the admin, the selling them all one by one, all the rest of it. And then the fees would end up being more because you'd be a solicitor one at a time, mortgage redemption one at a time, rather than just one big swoop. So actually,
he's value in other ways that isn't money.
I was at like 3.5 originally. He came down. We did the deal. And the funny thing was, he thanked us afterwards. I mean, thanks, it's a massive weight off my mind. And he still walked away with a lump of cash to enjoy in the his twilight years of his life. So you'll find a lot of, when you're dealing with portfolios, although it's obviously businessmen, or sometimes it's people that have always accidentally built it up and it's just a problem. You very often find getting the discounts a lot easier than you think.
Talking about this now, if people are going for a buy-to-let, they'll go to a buy-to-let lender, they'll get their 25% deposit, they'll borrow 75%, that goes through. So the buy-to-let mortgage companies, easy to find, very normal process. Let's move on to creative financing. You didn't get 39 individual buy-to-let mortgages for that, did you, when you're buying portfolios? How does that differ? And tell us some nice creative stuff to make that happen.
Well, we bought them on a bridging loan. There was a number of challenges. I'm not going to go into mega detail just now on those, but ultimately, high level, bought on a bridging loan. We actually used a couple of properties we own that were unencumbered as security, which allowed us to basically borrow off the back of them. So that puts the loan to value up. But you're basically giving them more. So although we're buying 4 million of property, we put about 400 grand of assets down. Which then basically meant so we could borrow more because we're borrowing against 4.4 million rather than the 4 we're purchasing effectively. And then the remaining deposit, we basically use private lenders to make that up. So then we're putting no money in. That effectively means you've got bridging loan plus you've got loans to private individuals. You could, on its own as a standalone deal, you could go, Christ, that's over leverage. But, and this is really important, so the background portfolio that's been paid down with low gearing with the cash flow can always support that. So you get it over the line. And you then exit. So we sold out of the 39, we sold 7. We sold the 7 lowest value ones. Obviously, the rest of them we then went to 4 different lenders and just refinanced them out. Obviously, for each property that you hold, you're tying up equity and you're keeping it there. For each property you sell, that equity is getting released as cash back into your bank. So actually, the way it all worked out, we ended up in and out the deal, and we had 8 unencumbered at the end, worth about 700 grand. We stuck the mortgage on them, and we paid off investors about 350, paid them off, and then the rest obviously was a little bit of cash back in, and we're back to square one. So actually, when I say that out loud, I'm like, that sounds quite simple, but I get that it's not your first train of thought when you're thinking, how do you structure it? So basically, recap, bridge on the way in, sales and buy-to-let mortgages on the way out, and then a private investor to top up your deposit so there's no money in. That's kind of the optional bit on the end.
Now, there was, when I say that out loud, it sounds simple. That sounds fucking terrifying to me. I'm like, that's wow, there's a lot of working parts there. But that's just bread and butter for you. That's nice.
You're a spreadsheets guy.
I am now.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm.
If you're good at a spreadsheet, it's all just, and then it's, the numbers don't lie.
Yep. Now, a question come in here about the future. It's the 5th of July, and we've just had the election announced. And again, everybody with political alliances, if this happens, it's game over. The world's going to get into austerity. Everybody has all their opinions, and essentially they're mostly fear-based. And this question is coming in, but it's one: what future regulatory changes should investors prepare for? But I'm going to add a little bit. With the election comes definitely uncertainty, but with fear. There's always going to be, so I'm going to keep that there, there's always going to be new legislation and uncertainty and changes, but lots of fear for businesses, for landlords, especially with a Labour government. Lots of people operating for fear. I'm assuming you don't. You're going to see opportunities in this.
Doesn't matter who's in power, no one's going to save you. No one's really cares about you.
Yep.
You need to take matters in your own hands, focus on your own personal economy. Okay, don't be completely selfish, your own personal economy, but the economy of your family, your friends, your peers around you. You'll find by joining communities, getting involved, groups, that you'll be around a lot of like-minded people, and you can bounce positivity and the ideas off one another. Mm-hmm. But the government's not going to save you. It doesn't matter whether they're red, they're blue, they're yellow, they're pink, they're whatever color.
Yep.
They're not going to save you. Some are worse than others, okay, but none of them are going to help you. And I think that's what's really important, is take matters into your own hands. You are responsible for your own financial future and financial security. You alone, not the government. That's pretty much my view on it.
Yep. By the way, Rishi Sunak was not paying tax on his wife's wealth, and he's not paying tax, and he's not getting hit for inheritance tax, because it's all done by very smart people. Keir Starmer's not going to be paying tax on all his property assets if he has any. All we need to do is find those. Sam's obviously mastered all those, and Sam's this is the network. So if things do change, we would change, because the people making the rules are changing it, because too many people have clicked on and are starting to do these things. But there will always be things there. You just need to change and adapt. And the tax strategies from 10 years ago.
When they say they don't pay tax, what do they mean by that? Because people say, Amazon don't pay tax. But I think what they mean is they don't pay corporation tax.
Yes.
Because Amazon, regardless of what tax they're paying, they're fueling an economy.
Yes.
They're hiring people. That triggers PAYE, national insurance. I know obviously they have a lot of these agencies that are self-employed or whatever, but one way or another, they're providing an economy with work, which puts money back in pockets.
Yeah.
And there's VAT, there's all these other taxes, and it's the economic activity. So I kind of think, well, so what if they're not paying any corp tax? Would you rather they went away and we had how many thousands of people out? They went, do you know what? We're going to set up this factory in France. So then you've got how many hundreds of thousands of people out of work, the VAT that we're collecting, the national insurance, all the other bits and pieces. So it's almost, okay, maybe that's a bit of a controversial opinion, but I'd rather the business was getting done here than somewhere else. But on top of all of that, and it's like wealthy people, if I've got, say there's 5 billionaires move into, Dunfermline where I stay, they're not just going to sit there and not spend any money. They're going to go down to the local restaurant, spend money. They're going to go to local car dealers, buy cars. They're going to actually spend money, and that money is coming back into the local, the economy. So actually, my view's always been, rather than chasing billionaires away by hiking taxes, we should try and entice them back over, so the money's getting pumped back into the economy. And I think what it boils down to is people are just jealous. That's what it boils down to. rather than actually, as I said before, if you want money and financial success, go after it. World's not fair. People like me and you, we're at a disadvantage to people born into money. So what? That's the cards you've been dealt. Just get on with it. Go after it, and just don't be jealous of these people. Just go after your own thing. Now, my view might be a bit controversial, but that's how I feel about it.
There was a post I put out, and it was a very lively discussion. The team will tell you. I think last year, 9,500 millionaires left the UK. And when I put that out, people were like, well, fuck them. It doesn't matter. Get them, seize all their assets, kick them out, take their passports so they can't get back. They're not paying tax. They're not paying tax anyway. Well, they will be paying tax. Their businesses will be paying tax. They're going to take them to the UAE where they won't pay tax. But those 9,500 billionaires will be spending their millions. 9,500 millionaires, will be spending that in local economies. They'll be fueling restaurants, everything. But if they don't live here, they're spending it in another country that's probably treating them better. So maybe even if they didn't pay tax on their business assets, as Sam said, they will still be churning millions and millions a year. And that's probably maybe, I don't know, £1 billion lost. But people's perception was they don't pay tax anyway. Leave them. You take their passports and kick them out. Good riddance. But there's a bigger economic thing there. So let's come up with some questions and then we'll finish up. Are there any common mistakes that new investors should avoid? I'm sure you've made them. I'm sure you've seen them.
Paralysis analysis is one of them. And then on the opposite extreme, people just going too gung-ho. I avoided using bridging finance for quite a few years. I was kind of scared of it. I probably should have started using it sooner, but I may be a bit, I know I'm saying, scale, growth, take the risks, but on the flip side, I think you need to master the basics. So I would, just my personal opinion is I don't think you should buy your first buy-to-let on a bridging loan unless you've got massive cash reserves and massive asset reserves, maybe in stocks or something liquid that you can get access to should things go wrong. That's the only caveat to that. So common mistakes, I think people get a bit pig-headed, think they know it all. I was the same. I thought, I've got a bit of cash here. I know about buy-to-lets. I'm going to buy a 2-bed flat yielding at X%. And I just went in and I didn't really self-managed. And I'm like, God, like some of the hairy moments that maybe could have gone wrong, just thinking, I know best, I'll do it myself, too much control. So there's an element of just surrounding yourself with good people, being willing to learn, and realizing you don't know everything, and also just not being in a hurry, because in the first couple of years, some people are in a massive hurry and get all down about it, but actually, no, you need to be consistent because they're your formative years. So I know that's a bit of a contradiction, paralysis analysis versus doing nothing, but there's a steady medium, and I think getting yourself around the right people can help you find that right medium, if that makes sense.
Definitely. There was nothing I would do in the buy-to-let world, investment world, without passing it past you first. My experience isn't, and this, despite being in a letting agency and an estate agency and structuring loads of deals for other people and having a small buy-to-let portfolio, my knowledge is here compared to Sam's. A few more questions. What are some ways to future-proof your buy-to-let property business? I love the term future-proofing, so it's like covered from cash flow lending.
Future-proof. So you want the right management team. Have an element of debt consolidation there. So, even if you're, so for example, you let a house at 650, mortgage is, I don't know, 300, let's say. Maybe pay 400, so you're chipping away at the mortgage. And if the rent goes up to 700, okay, it's nice getting extra cash from the business. Maybe put the overpayment up by a tenner. Just chip away, chip. Because over like 5 years, you'll pay off like 8-9 grand potentially. Yeah. And we're in a high interest rate environment. You're not going to pay as much now, but when the rates fall, and that's actually a thing. When rates fall, that's not when you go, hey, that's when you hammer down your debt. You hammer it down. And this is the thing, you can have an element of half cash flow, half capital repayment. So you're still getting the benefits of the cash flow. I think that's the big one, I think, paying down your mortgages, because you'll prevent a lot of pain. Yeah. There's been a couple of units we've had to refinance, and the fixed rates expired. We've had to change lender. And it's not about taking that, say, 70 grand debt, moving it to another lender, you trigger all these fees.
Yep.
So even if there's no early repayment charge, you've got like a redemption fee of 200 quid, you've got a bank transfer fee, you've got a solicitor fee, you've got a product fee. And all you do is you're just lumping more debt on, and you're giving yourself a load of hassle.
Yep.
So if you're paying your mortgages down, it kind of mitigates that.
Yep.
That sort of effect of, oh shit, when you've got to plow money into things. But also, I'm a big fan of 5-year fixes now. And as I've kind of alluded to earlier on in the call, almost get in and out your deals, park them, forget about them.
Yeah.
Don't worry about, in 2 years' time I can refinance, pull more money out, and no, just leave it. On to the next one. Leave it as long as you can, and just let it tick. Like I used to like 2-year fixes at the beginning, and I know why people like them, because you've got more control. I can pull money out if I need to, and no, park on a 5 and forget about it. But the one caveat is if you get a really good offer and need to sell, and you've got a massive early redemption charge.
Yeah.
But overall, I think 5 years outweigh 2s just on that element if you're on about future proofing and safety. So yeah, debt consolidation is the big one, and I think surrounding yourself with people and just kind of learning what's possible. I mean, your first few years in your property journey should be about learning, and not digging big holes for you because you've jumped into deals. So about learning, dipping your toes, doing I think it's very easy as well. Like I'm here talking about portfolio deals and creative finance, but I've been doing this 9 years now. 9 years. So I think it's easy to go, wow, that's what I should be doing. But no, start with a simple vanilla buy to let, nice and simple.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I've shared this a few times on like Zoom calls and events. My first ever property purchase, I just bought a 2-bed flat, round about the value, put a tenant in and held it. I owned it like 4 or 5 years and I just sold it. I didn't make a lot of money, but I made money. And I bought something vanilla. I bought something that rented well. It made money, but I didn't make lots of money. But the point is, that was probably one of the most important properties I bought because of what I learned and the confidence, and it was a stepping stone, if that makes sense. I think that's probably a big takeaway is don't be afraid to take an okay deal, an okay property just to get you started.
Nice. Like it. Solid advice. Now, we've alluded to this a few times about this is Wealth Network, because you have your own private network. Tell us about this as well, because that's going to get interesting to the viewers.
So this is Wealth Network. It's a community. The Scottish property Scottish property community is very fragmented. There's lots of little mastermind groups all over the place. I mean, I'm guilty of that. I had a mastermind group. And I thought, no, we need to take away the mastermind, the mentorship, the coaching, all that sort of stuff. Because people assume that's what masterminds always are. Just have a community focused on bringing people together, sharing ideas. We run events, so that kind of brings the community together. And then obviously with our numbers, we smashed past 200 a few months ago.
Nice.
We've now got a partnership B&Q. Just literally got Wren Kitchens on board, so we get special discounts and offers through them. And we're now, because of our numbers, we can go and get these deals, and that's all just benefits for the members. So it's all about community, and this is wealth. As the name alludes, it's all about wealth building. So there's a big focus on property, but it's about all things wealth generation, and linking into your health and well-being and mindset and other bits and pieces. And the best part of it is, and how I like things to be, is there's it's month to month and there's no tie-in. So literally it's not like, but it's that good that we've got a good retention rate. So
and tell us, because you've kept this accessible for everybody. It's no crazy fees if you want to share. How much is it a month?
It's a whopping £62.50 plus VAT a month. No contract, no minimum term, no joining fee. You literally stay as long as you need it.
You're in for 62 quid. If you don't get value, you leave. But again, we're in it. A few of our team members are in it, and there's definitely massive value in it.
So obviously, Pillow Partners, I don't mind obviously saying you're our preferred service accommodation management, short-term lettings management partner. So we do have preferred partners in the community who you're going to immense value. You've got architects, mortgage brokers, solicitors, actual proper qualified professionals giving the advice, not just people that think they know better. Yeah,
for sure. Right, I'm going to come up with one more final question. I always finish these 2 questions, one about you, one for the audience. Any last bits of advice for want-to-be newbie property investors, buy-to-let people? So one tip for the audience.
If you don't want to go big, don't bother. If owning more than 10 properties is not your thing, just don't do buy-to-let. Don't even consider it. And if you are considering it, just be prepared. It can be a lot of hard work. It can be very rewarding, but also a lot of hard work. So don't jump into it willy-nilly. That's probably my biggest one. Go big or go home.
Lovely, I like it. And finally, listen, I'm sure anybody watching this has had massive value. There's been like 10 different nuggets here. We've just talking about pension stocks and shares, ISAs, tax, limited companies, talking about bridging finance. So 10, 12 different things have popped out to me that I learned. If you've had value from this and would love to work with Sam, tell us any audience members, how can people work with you and be part of your team or get involved?
Well, anyone can join This Is Wealth Network 24/7. It's just www.thisiswealth.co.uk. You can join on the website. In terms of socials and reaching out to me, Instagram's my favourite one. It's just Sam Dyer Investment. I'm also on Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Sam Dyer Investment on all those channels. You'll reach out, give us a follow, ping me a message. Let's chat.
Fantastic. Our team will put the contact details under wherever you see this, guys. If you've been watching live, thank you very much for your comments and interaction. Don't think we got through all the questions. We're trying to keep it under an hour, but again, we're going to need to come back and do 2 or 3 more of these. So we'll probably do one a month until we run out of topics, which will probably be a year away. I'd like to thank Sam for coming down to do this, and I've learned a massive amount as well. Thank you to the viewers if you're watching on replay, wherever you see this, and you have questions for Sam. The contact details will be there. Genuinely somebody I've followed and admired for a long time. That's why we want to do some business together. Again, thank you for watching. Have a fantastic day, everyone. Cheers.